What's poppin', gamers? We live in a very uncertain time for video games. On one hand, digital entertainment is popular as never before. Seems like everybody is a gamer, with the exception of mobile players, because, as the scroll of gamer wisdom says,
mobile games are not real games!
video games usually are recognized as a branch of art. Wasn't it the very thing we've been waiting for decades now? As it turns out, beware of your own desires. Games in their majority are no longer created by players, but by salesmen. You either retire a game designer, or you work long enough to see yourself become a businessman. And the previously working free market started failing time and time again. My previous video, the review of an indie roguelike Ancient Abyss, was pretty positive towards the game, despite acknowledging that it had its flaws. However, originally this review was going to be more negative towards the game, its continuity, the lack of polish and other early access flaws. But when I was on the stage of voicing over my scenario, I could not get rid of an unsettling feeling that I was too harsh towards the game, only because I wanted to maintain some intrigue of why the game is good, but you maybe would not want to buy it. I was planning to say it as a hook of my video that would increase the average viewing percentage. And I would probably still do so, even in spite of my conscience. But the last night I watched a video by Lemon about the downward spiral of video games in recent years. This got me thinking about the industry and what he said here.
Gone are the days of scrappy, passionate developers working to make their games the best that they can be. Modern-day devs toil feverishly to meet impossible deadlines and end up creating products that both they and their audience hate.
Made me realize that being so harsh towards a small indie project would benefit nobody. So what is so bad about video games being art? The fact that people and journalists understood that as video games are capable of telling the same stories as movies. This resulted in an increasing amount of games with a rather mediocre/okayish gameplay and dramatic, movie-like stories. In general, this approach is not bad by default, but the market was oversaturated and now arcade games like Doom are considered fresh and novel. I rather see video game art as the ability to craft a refined, balanced gameplay that challenges the player and fulfills his or her desire for self-affirmation. Of course, I cannot restrict a whole branch of art only to one specific aspect, but the ability to play and interact with the world is the distinct feature that differentiates it from the rest kinds of media. Id Software have more rights to call themselves artists for creating a refined gameplay pattern with polished balance and mechanics where everything works like a clock about slaughtering demons, than Naughty Dogs with their 25-hour stretched movie story about redemption. My second point mostly concerns more complicated genres of video games, like strategies and especially RPGs. Specifically how companies gradually make them more and more casual every year to appeal to a broader audience. Some people believe that it is a good thing because this way games will be available and could be enjoyed by anyone.
You shut up when I'm talking to you!
However, I'm going to be blunt here. Making a video game for stupid people won't attract those who are smarter. Players are different, so stop trying to blend them into one enormous group. However, the sales say otherwise, so expect Elder Scrolls 6 to feature less skills. Wait, that happened in Oblivion. Then no skills, only perks. Wait, that happened in Skyrim. Anyway, Todd will find a way to make it even dumber. And yes, I do think that Bethesda is partially guilty for the RPG genre dying. I mean, we already live in a timeline where Mass Effect and Skyrim are an RPG standard. Another issue with modern games is the way writers started pushing messages through their stories. Advocates often claim that politics have always existed in video games, that It's true, I won't deny that. However, only about a dozen of years before, a game would bring up an issue and look at it from different perspectives, maybe occasionally hinting towards what is right and what is wrong, but overall allowing the player to decide and comprehend the issue for themselves. Today, however, every second game tries to shove a giant red pill, blue pill, black pill, gay pill, whatever into the player's throat without a glass of water. Take New Vegas, my favorite game of all time, as an example of an older approach to ideas and themes in storytelling. New Vegas focuses on the rivalry between different groups with different ideologies. The game, however, demonstrates different perspective on each major faction. NCR is a classical all-good democracy that proclaims its best intentions, but we can see how corrupt and ineffective it is practically anywhere in the game. Caesar's Legion is a strong amalgamation of former tribes that has enough power to keep the order, but is extremely ruthless, authoritarian, and even misogynist at the core of its philosophy. Mr. House is the smartest person in the world that constantly proclaims how he wishes the best for humanity. But would you risk giving unlimited power to a 200-year-old megalomaniac? Courier is a courier, his faction has no distinct features that can be discussed. Every person will have a different look at these factions and will choose the one where the positives outweigh the negatives. The game gives a diverse, layered perspective on the world and mostly does not allow developer bias to slip in. And that is despite Chris Avellone himself saying that Legion are, in his opinion, the antagonists of the game and have no redeeming qualities. Modern games would concentrate the whole story over the critique of the faction they personally don't like and feature female Mrs. House empathizing in her every line how man could never expect the smartest person on the wasteland to be female. Or imagine George Lucas appearing on screen at the end of Revenge of the Sith and explaining to the audience for 10 minutes how the movie is about a politician that manipulates a democracy into giving him more power for the sake of safety. It is my critique of dictatorships. Did you understand? Authoritarianism is bad. That was not a George Lucas impression, by the way, I just used a random voice. This all got me thinking about why I barely play new AAA video games now, usually preferring to play tested classics of previous years, sometimes even going more than a decade into the past, or outright find a new indie video game by a smaller developer. That is what my channel is largely based on, playing and reviewing interesting unknown indie. I don't know, when gamers are portrayed in media, they're shown to be excited over playing a brand new cool game. In reality, every new AAA is either an open world Ubisoft game or an Uncharted copy-pasted gameplay with a movie story about teaching the player how horrible of a person everyone who disagrees with the writer's political stance is. And that does not look exciting to me. I think on average I play about a new high-budget AAA a year. In 2016 that was Doom, in 2017 Wolfenstein 2 and regretfully Shadow of War. In 2018 I believe I have not touched a single 2018 AAA game, or at least could not remember one. In 2019 there were 2 AAAs that I've played. Metro Exodus, because it was a continuation of one of my favorite gaming franchises, and The Outer Worlds. Even then I was not particularly satisfied with the latter. In 2020 I played the long-awaited Doom Eternal, and I loved it. Weird how most of them are FPS and only one is an RPG, not even a particularly good one. And in between these games, I was spending my life in a smaller or older great games. I unlocked almost every achievement in Enter the Gungeon. I played the first 2 Metro games for the first time and loved them. In a similar fashion, I discovered the amazing Wolfenstein New Order, which manages to simultaneously be a good shooter and have a great movie-like story that actually works. Sadly, it was just a lightning in a bottle, and and the future of the franchise was not as bright. I opened the strategies for myself, pouring the time I could use to learn Adobe After Effects into Crusader Kings 2 and Hearts of Iron 4. These are all amazing games, but they cannot show their full potential because they are not mainstream. So, how could I hate the game whose developers honestly position it as early access and are consistently releasing updates, fixing different bugs and changing the gameplay according to the players' feedback? This is much more than I could say about half of professional video game studios. I am desolated by the fact that about 20-25 years ago, games chose their technological advancement into graphics and realism, or with the new concepts and possibilities of player interaction. Today we are playing practically the same games as we played then, but less rough around the edges and with better graphics. Today, when even small studios or even single developers coding from their houses can make innovations in gameplay, imagine what could bigger studios come up with having their budgets. This is why I prefer indie to AAA. In our dying world, where everyone is chasing the biggest profits, indie games manage to capture and preserve video games as art. And also my PC is outdated. Thank you for listening. The script of this video was born rather spontaneously and initially was supposed to be a part of the Ancient Abyss review, my previous video, but then it came out of control and grew so big I decided to just create it as a separate video, not to damage the continuity of the original one. I just had to spew my thoughts and speculations somewhere because speaking monologues in your head about a topic that nobody would ever hear about for hours is, while relaxing, utterly pointless. Press the like button if you agree or at least enjoyed my rambling, and subscribe because I've been teasing for a long time now, but the next video is 99% finally going to be the first part of my complete analysis of Hunt Down the Freeman that you would not want to miss. See ya!